Hello, everybody. Welcome to Ctrl+Alt+Well, a guide to AI-driven wellness. I am joined by our esteemed Wellness Committee. So we're going to go around and just introduce ourselves. I'll start it off. I am Jennifer Canopy-Comer. I am the co-fellowship director of the Medical Education Fellowship at Stanford. And time management and physician efficiency is definitely a passion project of mine. So I'm really excited for this talk today.
And I'm L.A. Alvarez. I'm the Director of Wellbeing at Stanford. And also I direct the peer support program in our institution. And my specific interest here is how can we utilize AI to help us also improve efficiencies of practice and also perhaps advance some of the culture of wellness initiatives that we do.
Hey, good morning, everyone. My name is Rob Lamb. I am a practicing emergency physician out of Colorado. I work for University of Colorado Health, and I'm the director of physician wellness for the Southern region. And my interest in this comes, and I bring the angle of kind of being a community practicing physician who has lots of different hats, but not a lot of administrative support. So how can AI help physicians like me to try to kind of balance the workload, to kind of help me with these different roles, while still kind of doing a lot of clinical practice.
And then I'm Andy Grock. I don't think I have any fancy titles, but I'm at the West LA VA, and I do my academic stuff through UCLA. I'm a big fan of medical education research and online education, and I love doing lots of wellness work with AAEM.
So you guys are all probably well aware that AI is increasingly integrated in many facets of our lives. I know in our own department, we are getting more and more lectures about the topic, and I'm always seeing another different article or blog post about it. So, as a committee, when we meet, we were talking about how, AI is just growing and growing. But, it is really important to explore its potential because it has so much, it could be really a very powerful tool that we can use for our own wellness. And so we were like, that's it. We need to put together a webinar so that we can each kind of share our personal journeys and see, how can we actually, use AI, to really better our wellness and to reduce our workloads, to have more time, and to really get that work-life harmony. So we are going to hit Ctrl+Alt+Well, and we're going to unlock the full potential of AI-driven wellness. So I am going to start us off here. I'm sure many of you, have this burden of clinical and academic work, and it always appears to be growing and growing, and we get more and more stuff on our plate. And often that leads us to be feeling overwhelmed. And, I know in our department, we have just a lot of admin tasks. And sometimes, you feel like it can take hours to do, a certain admin task. And sometimes it's just minutes, but all those minutes really add up. And there are AI tools out there that can really reduce this workload. And so what I'm going to be talking about, and kind of my platform, is going to be, how do we reduce our workload? So the more things that we can offload our plates, that's the more time that we free up so that we can get more minutes back in our day. And again, we can use those for our wellness.
I like this a lot because I think that's what it allows us to do is not just to punt the work to another person, which also then impacts their well-being, and then creates an environment where we're just passing work for each other. So if we can actually figure out ways to optimize our workflow with AI, then it's a win-win for everybody.
That's such a good point, LA, because frequently in my time management slides, I'll have delegate, but that does mean that you're delegating that work to somebody else. And that's what's so great about AI, is because you're actually, delegating to this AI robot. And so it's not actually just passing the buck to someone else's plate. You're actually, using a tool that we have access to. All right, so we're going to move into, how do we actually reduce that workload? What are some of the ways AI can help us with some of those administrative tasks that just take so much time? So the first thing I think of is writing letters of recommendation. So I don't know again if you guys experience this, but I'll get that email in my inbox, and it will say like, we'd really like your, recommendation for Dr. So and so, and can you please provide a letter? And I always want to support my colleagues. I love supporting, my colleagues and lifting them up. But man, it takes a long time to write a letter of rec. And so I do want to put a disclaimer in here. Like, obviously, we're going to mention a lot of things about generating text. And anytime you do so, you always just obviously have to be cognizant of reading through it and making sure you go through that practice of, making sure those are what your words are, and, really using it as a platform, kind of like a jumping board to making sure that like letter is what you want it to say, or that email is what you want it to say. But it is good to start you off when you have that kind of blank page, to give you some structure, and then you can always tweak whatever AI, puts out. So just make sure that you always are giving it that kind of second look. But for letters of rec, this is what I do that I find really helpful, is I'll go into the AI and I will paste the colleague's CV. And so I'm giving it all real information, right? Because you want to make this as objective as possible when you're using AI. So I give it all the information, and then I am really cognizant of like really telling it the most information that's personal as possible. Like, I really appreciate this, and this about this colleague. I want this to be a strong letter of recommendation. I want to highlight these things, and I'll just kind of dictate it into the AI chat box. And then it has, the person's CV. So it's going by real facts that person has done. But I don't know about you guys, but like to look through someone's CV, and especially our impressive colleagues that just have like 20 pages of things, it can be really overwhelming. So I like that AI goes through and it seems those, really picks out those common themes that would probably take me hours to do, and then it can give at least a first draft of like a good letter of recommendation. What do you guys do? Do you guys do the same thing? Do you use it for letters of recommendation?
I have, and that's because we actually did a study last year. Where we created these letters of recommendation for promotion for associates and assistant professors, and we submitted it to a bunch of. We actually had it posted it online and asked like people who review applications, and we got about 32 volunteers to distinguish the accuracy between human versus AI versus like hybrid version. And what we found was that participants were unable to reliably differentiate between human and AI authored letters of recommendation for promotion. So again, very specific. It's more for academic promotion. But what we found was that it's to some degree, people actually had a hard time distinguishing AI versus somebody like human written letters. And the way that I see this is that, like you said, it takes a lot of time to review those letters. And for the most part, these are letters that, unless I say negative things about that person, it's more of a checklist of like, all right, how many letters they've gotten, what are the cool things that they've done. And so it's a summary of their work, but it takes a lot of effort from our side with not a lot of value in the end, because again, like they just want somebody to co-sign that this person should be promoted. And I love the idea of like utilizing AI to do that. It also helps me with my grammar.
I often feel the same way. I'm always like, how much are they really looking at this letter versus like a checkbox? And you're like, gosh, the hours I put into this just to check the box, like.
Because we care.
Yeah, right.
I've used it for a letter of recommendation, just because, and more of like just as a structure, just because, even when like you're trying to figure out like what are the different categories, like how do we review someone's career and their impact. And so AI has been helpful for just globally creating these categories, like how do you sum up someone's career? So for me, like creating a letter of recommendation for someone that's, done some great service for institution, from like a well-being, like thank you for your service to your institution. It's been really helpful for like just reminding me which categories should I look at, so I don't have to use some of that brain power to remember, oh well, it's patient care, but it's also systems and how culture creation, all type of stuff. So I think AI has been very helpful for me in that regard.
Andy, I think you were going to say something. You admitted.
Yeah, I did want to comment though, for Jennifer, you did something very lovely there that I like, which is you made sure everything in it is true. right? We all know the examples that have been put out of AI when it doesn't know something. A lot of them will just generate made up stuff to answer. And so you always want to double check it these days and just make sure everything you put in is accurate.
I think that's a good point, Indy, because part of the flaw that we'll soon experience with using generative AI is that it's utilizing what we're inputting, and then it has a memory of whatever we've written. So if we're doing hypotheticals, it also including that in its bank of information to incorporate later. And so double checking, triple checking to make sure that the content is accurate is very important. And also, like, for me, it's just helpful to avoid many of the fluffs that sometimes I tend to do. And I was like, I just need to be a little bit more direct. And what I think in the lens of DEI, what I like about it with helping me craft that letter of recommendation is that I ask GPT to critique it to make sure that it's not like I don't use biasing language. I don't like just focus on their like quality. So like that gender bias, for instance, like, oh, they're compassionate versus like if it's a guy, historically we're more likely to comment on their ability to do procedures and leadership things. So I'm able to balance the latter better with AI.
Yeah, I love the idea of that little paperclip pop up, with like the women to men, like bossy versus assertive. Like,
Yeah.
did you mean this? Like maybe an article with a link on how maybe that sounds less ideal or sexist or whatever it is.
Nice. So many
That
great points.
clip reminds me of Microsoft Word.
All right. So the first thing we talked about was the letters of recommendation, and a lot of great pointers on that. Something else that we use it for is writing learning objectives. So again, I don't know if you guys are the same way, but man, we have our CCC meeting, so clinical competency meeting, and for us to prepare, we need to write learning objectives for all the residents that we need to review. And that can also be quite time consuming. And again, sometimes like we just focus on one comment we see, we really don't get that global perspective that the residents need. So what I did for our last CC meeting, and I think this is a work in progress. I actually think our CCC committees are working with AI and seeing how they can use it like in the best, way without like some of the negative consequences. But I was like, I'm going to try it out this CCC. So I put in all kind of our end of shift evaluations into ChatGPT. And I said, can you write, like, pick out the most common themes and write 3 learning objectives for this resident? And I have to say, they did a really good job of, like, I gave it a little bit more prompts because I agree, the more prompts you give it, the better, like, of how we word things and kind of what we're looking for and that we're emergency medicine physicians. But man, I have to say that saved me a lot of time, and they were probably better than I could come up with because, again, sometimes focus on just like one comment I see, but it really had this like general consensus of all the end of shift evaluations. So I really liked it for that purpose. And again, I of course like overread it, make sure that it was accurate, make sure it didn't say anything that I didn't mean. But I thought that was another cool way. I don't know if you guys have done that. If you use it to write any like objectives in any ways.
For me, the beauty of being a recovering core faculty PD is I don't have CTC, so I don't use it that way. But it gave me a reminder that I do write like evaluations for residents and also for the staff that I work with, like for their annual like performance. And so again, it's a great way to consider thinking about like, here's a garbled examples of like why Kanapiki is awesome, and here are the things that she's working on, and here are the things that she's really helped me. And also like I wish like this is an area that she can expand more, and then allowing GPT to phrase that in a better way so that it's compassionate, it follows a SMART goal of specific, measurable, like all of those attributes that oftentimes I fall short when I just give it my very quick feedback, like you did a great job, which is never helpful for people. rather than to make them temporarily feel good.
Yeah, this is more of a pie in the sky ideal state idea, but I know there's a lot of research that kind of helps differentiate like what do experts do versus learners do.
Yeah.
And I wonder what the role for AI could be in like maybe somehow listening to like a patient resident interaction, listening to the attending patient interaction, listening to the presentation, and then maybe it could even formulate some like tips on what the attending was doing
Oh,
or thinking of that the resident maybe could have been.
I love this addition that you're doing, Andy, which is the
yeah.
guy, like what would that look like in the future? Because I can totally see that even with the way that so for the non-academic people and not working with residents, I can see this like the way that we interact with consultants on the phone. If there's a recorded line that actually can transcribe some of these conversations, like what are ways to optimize the conversation so that I give them a full history, like a full handoff? And
Yeah.
also, like, what are ways, like, what did I say that led to XYZ, like, I don't know, being angry or like questioning or whatever, and how might I change that phrasing in the future? I love that.
I like how ChatGPT is not subject to being shy about like piercing the hierarchy. So if you're going to tell the attending that there's something they're doing right, you do not have
Yeah,
any hesitation.
fantastic. Yeah.
I used to try to
Yeah.
ask my students like, hey, this next patient, why don't you tell me how I can improve? And I didn't get a lot of positive feedback or negative feedback. I didn't get a lot of feedback in general, but I'm sure AI would not have any problem telling me the things that I could probably improve.
Before we
Very
continue,
true.
I wonder if we can actually reflect here on the kind of AI that we use, because there's a lot of, I don't know, kind of pick, were you gonna cover that?
No, but it's a great place to actually talk about that because I'd love to know what you guys use.
Yeah, I use ChatGPT, but I use the paid version just because I use it a lot, and we're gonna talk about like other uses of it, but I use it every day now, and so that's why like the investment of $20 per month is helpful for me.
Tell me the difference. What is the main difference? Why would somebody get the paid version? What are you getting more of?
Yeah, I
Do
think
you
it's
know? I don't
there.
know.
I think there's a lot more access to. So number one, I can spend more time using it. Otherwise, I get cut shorter with like, oh, you've utilized this. Wait 6 more hours. Come back later to use again, which is really frustrating when you're writing like you're
Yeah.
developing pictures for presentations or whatnot. But also like there's a lot more suites of apps that you can use with the
Yeah.
paid version.
I saw Dolly, I think only comes with the paid version.
Yeah.
So if you need it for images, it's not free anymore. It used to be free. I remember
Yeah.
back in the day,
Yeah.
and now it's not. Well, I'm with you. I also use ChatGPT. I do use the 3.5 version. I'm pretty sure soon I'll go up to the paid version, but that's what I'm using right now.
Yeah.
So I use
No
ChatGPT.
financial disclosures here. I just have to say that I don't.
Yeah,
I
right.
wish, but I don't. I just have to say that because we're gonna be talking about apps and stuff.
So I do use ChatGPT, but I've noticed that it seems like they're integrating more AI tools into some of the common things that I already use. So like I noticed that like I think Gmail will tell me you often don't get emails from X, Y, and Z, maybe as a precaution, but I'm sure they're using an AI tool. So I'm noticing more and more that those tools are starting to be integrated into some of the like legacy
Yeah.
type things that I'm already using.
Yeah, you're right. Grammarly does that now too, like with giving me suggestions on how to phrase my sentence using AI. Andy, what do you use?
I just play around.
Yeah,
So
You don't
I
commit.
just use the basic Chat GPT, and
I love it.
whenever one of these comes up, I love it.
Yeah, our hospital developed its own GPT, I think only because they know that we keep on using it and they're concerned for HIPAA related stuff. And
Mhm.
so they created a secure GPT and blocked Chat GPT, so we can't use it in a hospital now.
Oh,
And I don't know if we're gonna get to this later on, but I love it with writing discharge instructions. Like,
Really?
yeah, I write down. So the
Wow.
other day, I had like somebody with siloadenitis, and that's easy for us, right? Like, but I didn't know how to write in the dish. I was like, suck on lemon, lemon drops. Like, and I don't even say that nicely. So it actually, so I wrote down like my prompt would be explain to a patient at a sixth grader level what sialoadenitis is, how to treat it, including a better way to say suck on lemon. And it did, like, so it gave me a nice thing, and then I then like I looked it over, I copy pasted that to our discharge instruction. So it made my documentation better and more efficient rather than me Googling something, copy pasting, which is also requires me to read that thing. But this one, at least I can change some wordings and make it more focused on that particular patient.
Yeah. I love the idea of discharge instructions using AI. And then you pointed out something I really want to emphasize is titrating it to the patient's education or reading level,
Yeah.
or even language. I don't know quite
Yeah,
how much
I do
AI
that
is
with that. I
involved in
explain in Spanish. So I do the next
Yeah.
step.
Wow.
Yeah.
Yeah, so that could be a super efficient time trick as the ER doctor, which and will end up maybe even providing better care for the patient.
Yeah, and I copy both the English and the Spanish version. That way it's there so that like if the interpreter wants to like look it over as well, like they can see that I do did not I, but did GPT do a great job actually interpreting the English version of it. But yeah, so I have, because it has better access to other languages than what we. So right now, like it's easier to get like maybe English and Spanish for many of our discharge instructions, but beyond that, other languages it'll be very hard.
I love that idea. I hope maybe Epic one day will have like you enter what you want to say and it will like, write it for you. Wouldn't that be beautiful?
Oh, that's another pie in the sky.
Great. Yeah, right.
Or just automatically collecting the data, because right now I click on different aspects of Epic and then I have to make the connections for myself, but it'll be nice like when I'm doing MDM, like, hey, have you considered this? And by the way, based on these, and we have a colleague actually in our department, Dr. Maya Yadam. She does this already with her early approaches for catching MI based on just like demographics, like their age, their presentation, and so like really what the registration people, the information the registration people get, based on that, it'll tell you like, hey, this patient has like a 90% chance of having a heart attack. You should order an EKG. It's like it doesn't even do like you should order an EKG. It's just it automatically orders an EKG for that patient, which saves time for one day, for catching the MI. And she's shown that her version is a lot better performance than like us, like doctors there waiting in the waiting room, kind of evaluating every single patient that we see.
And it's also fast.
Yeah.
Right? Like this can work on every patient instantly, as opposed to, us poor humans that have to slog through and walk around and chat with everyone.
Right. And like chart digging. I mean, how long, like sometimes like, they don't get their care at your institution. I'm going through Care Everywhere, trying to find out their past medical history. So this could like do it for you. How cool is that?
Rob, I saw you and you were going to say something.
No, just listening.
Well, I was going to say also for writing learning objectives, even if you don't, are in the community and you aren't, having to write learning objectives for residents, I also like to use this for learning, for writing objectives if you're giving a speech, right? So like say you're submitting a talk for a national conference or a local conference or regional conference, and they always want you to write some learning objectives. I like to put in, I like to put in, I like put in my, like what the talk's about. And then I could like, put in, like the words we're always supposed to use as like verbs. And then I let it do its thing. And I'm like, oh my gosh, it takes me so long to write learning objectives for a talk I'm gonna submit.
It's great for like generating like cool titles.
Oh, we're gonna get into that.
Oh, all right.
Yeah, we have a slide for that. I'm sure this is also a very hot topic. Is email communications. I would say for me, like group emails, like if I know I'm writing a big group, they're just like such a time suck because I'll have to review it a bunch of times. I'm like, is the tone okay? Did I mess anything up? And so what I've been doing is I just like dictate into ChatGPT what I want to tell the group, and then it makes it so pretty and it goes so fast, and it really like saves me hours to produce a really good email. Again, I've used this a lot in like group emails, like, you know, for work, but also for life. Like, I coach my kids' basketball team, and so I wanted to have a really cool introduction like email, and it was just creative. Like, it pulled from like other sources, like what coaches usually write, and it had this really cool format. And I'm like, wow, I can just hit send. Like, I don't really need to spend those hours like making sure I'm like have a good tone, and the email is like, you know, well written. Um, what do you guys use it for? How do you? I'm sure you use AI for email. How do
By
you
the way,
guys?
do you dictate? Because I haven't done that yet. I'm like the worst with
I
dictate.
totally dictate.
Oh, that's a
I like,
good
you know,
idea.
I use Dragon at work, and at home I use function twice on my Mac, and I dictate everything. I try not to type as much as possible.
No, I'm a typer. That's a great thought. Yeah. I'm a nocturnist, so and so because of my other roles, I have meetings during the daytime, and so if I'm post overnight or I'm sleep deprived, my filter is definitely off. Um, and so I've gotten in trouble with like the Bronx training in me comes off and like, what do you mean you like and so but now I can actually truly just like blurt. I type out exactly what I want to say. And then GPT just makes it nicer, like you said, like because I have prompts, so like I want this to be direct, but like a New York City direct, but also kind and compassionate and grateful, and so it does, and then it goes it swings a different direction, and I was like, take away all the fluff, and so it'll narrow it down for me, and
Yeah.
so it's helpful that way for me.
I think you bring up a great point, is that don't accept the first version of what it gives you, right?
Yeah,
And I think like some people just stop, and I'm like, and I say, take out the fluff. It should only be 3 lines. Like, I totally keep going until I get, and sometimes I don't know if you guys feel, I almost feel bad. I'm like, sorry, I'm gonna ask you for another version. And I'm like, wait, why am I apologizing to AI here?
I love.
But sometimes I love like version like 18 or something, and I just keep refining it, and then I end up with really what I want, which is nice.
Yeah. Rob, Andy, do you guys use GPT for emails or communications?
I haven't used it much, to be honest with you. But you are reminding me of, there were articles when all the Google Home or Echoes or whatever all those home things were called, that it was like teaching kids to be rude, because none of
Really?
them require like a
Oh,
please or like a
please.
nice tone.
Oh, yeah.
And so I half jokingly taught my kid to always say please, and it worked great when he was like 3 to 5. But it is funny. I don't know, when you type in ChatGPT, do you ever say please?
Yes, I definitely do.
I do
I
not.
do,
That's a very
because I
good
feel
point.
bad for some reason. Yeah.
Yeah.
So getting back to Andy's comment about ideal state, I find that sometimes I rush a little bit in emails, and then I read it and I should have taken more time just to like read it one more time for grammar and context and everything like that. So ideal state, they would learn how I like to communicate and just correct all my grammar, plus like put it in a, like, you know, when it, like you said, if I'm post nights or something like that, put it in a way that like makes sense, like, oh, this is definitely coming from Rob. But
Right.
I don't use it a whole lot right now, but ideal state, I think it would
Uh,
definitely make me look smarter in an email with proper grammar, spelling, and also context.
Yeah, I don't know. Yeah, I think you can actually, I think we're there. I think we can actually train, because my emails now, I don't spend a lot of time training it. I do click the give me another version just so I can have an idea of how to phrase it better. But I certainly, it knows that I don't like a lot of fluff, and it knows like I like my email with dear, and then I like my email with gratitude at the bottom. Like
yeah.
all of those now are just built in. And what I do now also, if it's really like a high stakes email, I include the previous person's email, and then I write my response, and then that way, like the GPT can critique. Did I answer any of their points? Did I consider some of the things that they may have raised that I, again, like you, Rob, like I read it too fast and I didn't acknowledge it. And the language is a lot more beautiful because I want to be responded to the way that like it's suggesting to me, because I was like, oh yeah, it incorporated what you said, so it highlighted that I listened to it, I understood what you said, and here's my response without too much fluff.
I like that. I never thought like put in what you're responding to so you make sure that you get everything that person commented on. I love that. That's a great idea.
Yeah. See, we're already learning from each other here.
I know. I know. I love it. Um, how else I use it? I mean, it's kind of it's not necessarily email, but it's communications. Is I don't know when I have to write like a sympathy card or a thank you note. Like sometimes I can waste minutes, like just thinking of the perfect words to say, and I can't tell you how many times I'm like, this is the sympathy I want to write to this person. Can you write this out for me? And man, it's really again saved me a lot of time just to write kind of those thank you notes or those sympathy cards.
Yeah,
I
you're
guess. Oh, go ahead, please.
oh, I was gonna say you're reminding me one of the best pieces of academic advice I got from Teresa Chan, the master. She told me when I was struggling to get a first draft of something done, just a reminder, the first draft is terrible. It's allowed to be terrible. The first draft is the hardest draft, and then everyone edits over and over and over and over and over, and eventually it's this beautiful piece of work.
Yeah.
And I love the idea of using Chat GPT to just knock out, or whatever AI software you're gonna use,
Mhm.
to knock out that terrible rough draft, and then you can come in and just perfect it.
Yeah. No, I like that a lot as well. I was just also gonna comment on what several of you have kind of mentioned about like us kind of incorporating it with our emails, our communication. Like I'm all of a sudden I had this vision of like Black Mirror of how authentic are we then with each other, right? Like if we know that these emails that we're getting that are nice and like very well worded, are actually just AI generated. What are your thoughts on that?
It's interesting because I feel like we all have this intention inside of us to
Yeah,
express ourselves and make someone feel a certain way.
yeah,
And so I think the intention is still there. The
yeah,
goodness is still
Mhm.
there.
yeah.
But, if you use a tool to express yourself or your intentions better, is that a negative thing?
But did your attention change in just the words actually? Yeah, I don't know
Yeah.
this. I haven't actually like reflected on this a lot more.
Yeah. Well, because I could see it if you have very superficial intentions and you're like, oh, I don't
Yeah,
want to spend time on this. Let me just chat
right.
GPT it and call it a day. As
Yeah,
opposed to like, wow, I really want to write this heartfelt letter and I'm really
yeah,
struggling. How can I get help?
Right. I feel like
Yeah.
if you go through that extra step of wanting to make it like, really make your colleague feel good or whoever you're giving it to, like if you're going to chat GBT, like you probably want it to be really special. So that's a nice intention behind it. And also like, again, I feel like when it writes something for me, I really look through and if there's something that I'm like, ooh, that's too much. I don't feel like that. I delete it. And I hope that that's what people would do. But I think that is a good question. I have thought about, does this sound too AI that the person's like, you didn't write this, and then it loses its meaning, right? But I have thought about that.
yeah.
Rob, have you ever used it for any of that? Have you used it for any like kind of communications to people or?
I can't say that I have. And I think to your point, like it's meant to augment like it because we have the human connection side of things, right? So we don't
Yeah,
all live in the virtual world yet. And so I would hope that we could sniff out when an email like doesn't seem to feel like it's right coming from that person, like someone that you always have a tense relationship, and then like, oh, here's this flower email, like something doesn't seem right here. And maybe that works, like if you're a customer service rep and like you just, for them, they don't have to put the emotional investment in trying to be overly sunny when they're really just trying to get their job done. And they're probably not gonna like, I'm not gonna interact with that customer service rep in the real world. But if it's a colleague in a place where we, with a human connection, I think I would probably notice that something wasn't right in that email, unless it truly did flow from what I think that person's the way that they would say or speak. So yeah, but I don't usually do that for like, I things I want to craft like strategically that I think that makes a lot more sense, but I don't use it as a substitute for me personally. So
I think the other wrinkle here that I was debating whether or not to bring up in this talk, but now that you guys brought it up, I'm jumping in. Is I have a very, very, very good friend with a learning disability,
yeah,
and he very much struggles to write like speeches
yeah,
and sort of interpersonal things. And it was a little bit of a joke for his 10-year wedding anniversary. He gave a whole speech, and his daughter kept making fun of him and saying that he was using AI. And and you know, a lot of his close friends know how he struggles with this, and I'm like, what a beautiful thing for him that
Yeah,
he
Yeah.
was not as limited by his ability to write things down and communicate, because he could refer to ChatGPT and like sort of get it to where he wanted it to be.
that's what I'm getting from this conversation as well, is that we're a lot more intentional actually and mindful about the choices of words that maybe, at least what I experience is like historically, I don't spend enough time with the choice words that I'm using, and then it lands like flat, or it lands like hurtful, or it lands like completely something that I did not mean. And GPT allows me to at least like look at several versions of what I'm trying to say, and then maybe say it better.
Right.
Yeah, now we're gonna be
I,
like judging ourselves whenever we get communication from each other. I was like, oh, totally GPT.
well, and I love that example though. Like that's like a really, heartfelt, use of AI. The funny thing is, I also use it to write my 10-year like vow renewal. So I just like dictated in everything I felt about my husband, and then it really produced this like masterpiece. And for the most part, like I tweaked a couple of things, but that was like what I used to say our vows. So
I love it. You will like the
I agree.
GPT-4, or I think they're coming up
Yeah,
with
I know. I should just go
in the
for it.
summer.
I should go for it. All right. So this is another use, and that is writing journal article revisions. So again, how I decided what to add for this webinar, I really just looked through my history of ChatGPT of all the cool things that I used it for. And this was one that I found just like really helpful. So that's writing journal article revisions. And so what I really put in was just, hey, this is my article. And so I posted my article in ChatGPT. And then I said, this question for a review. How should I respond to it based on my article? This is what I got. So ChatGPT basically just responded to the reviewer, and I thought like wrote a pretty good response. And I was like, wow, that again would have taken me hours, and I just got those hours back for my wellness. And so that I just thought it was like genius. I don't know if you guys have done this, but I was like, oh,
Yeah, I'm always very
very funny.
terrified about doing this because many of the journals tell you to disclose AI use, and also so that one I think it's uncharted territory, but certainly I think it's a great use of understanding the perspective. And also, like, I don't know about you, but when it gets to reviewer number 2, I'm like, I don't know, like you should have read it again, but then GPT help me like phrase it better, like
Right.
actually highlighted it in this paragraph, and this is what we meant. Thank you for pointing this out. We will clarify that language better, or however nice way to say that I've kind of learned over the past couple of years as well.
Yeah. And obviously disclaimer is it just gives me a launching board. You don't have to do word for word, but it is nice to say, hey, objective person who's reading my paper, how would you respond to this? Because sometimes again, it just takes time for you, and you don't have that outside perspective. And that's what I like to use it for. And I don't, it's again not as much as writing the paper, but responding to the questions
Yeah,
of the paper.
you're right. It also helps you kind of get past that, like from a self-compassion perspective. Oh, for me, when I read those comments, I take it personally. Like, I can't believe like they would say this. And then I was like, well, it's not about me right now. It's about the paper that they want me to improve. Like, how do I objectively respond to this? So I like that frame of like, do I have all the information that they're looking for? Can I emphasize that better? Or if I don't, like, that's a good point. Let me explore that a little bit more so I can explain it better.
Exactly. All right. Next way that I use it, and we have seen it put into effect today, is coming up with catchy titles for things. So you will see that we had a pretty cool title for today's webinar, and that's just not by chance. I was like, you know what, let's take it to ChatGPT and let's see what we could call. And I put in again as much information as possible. And you will see these were the alternatives for today's talk. in the lower right-hand corner. And I just thought this one was just the best one. But you know, how many times do you like, again, it could be like a national talk. It could be, you know, we have like, when I was APD, we'd have like these like, you know, med student like recruiting kind of you know, sessions, and you want to do it something catchy that gets people's like, you know, attention. And so I would, any kind of event that I have, I'm like, hey, ChatGPT, what cool thing could I call this? And it, again, it comes up with really catchy things that you just don't think about. Have you guys done this? Have you used it for any titles for anything that you've done?
Yeah, for me, for sure, especially with initiatives that I know it's gonna be painful. Like at least I can like be a little bit playful with
Yeah.
the name of the initiative, so people might be intrigued, interested, or a little bit more curious, as opposed to like, I don't want to do any chart optimization.
Yeah, for me, 100% too. And I did it on a talk about kind of on moral injury too, and which I thought was kind of a little bit thorny, just because like, you know, like, is it morality? Is it, what are you talking about there too? And I thought it, it did a nice job suggesting some different titles, just because I was trying to rack my brain, like, how do you make this in a catchy way that people actually want to attend an, you know, a lecture on moral injury, which sounds like a downer. So I thought it did a nice job of like creating some interesting titles to try to capture people's attention.
I wonder for
Yeah, I
the,
feel
we don't have a lot of time left. Like, what will be like the other key takeaways that we're gonna be sharing with the group here?
well, I was just gonna say for title wise, also like journal article, like an article you write or a blog post you write.
Mhm.
If you just like highlight everything, put into GPT, you could also get like titles for, you know, things other than lectures.
It's funny for me, I like to think of like the pain points of working in emergency
Yeah.
medicine, and I sometimes think like, how could we solve this? The one thing that comes up that we haven't talked about in terms of like functioning as a group is scheduling. It's like, I don't know who does everyone's schedule out there, but I feel like they always seem to get burned out.
Yeah.
They always seem overwhelmed. And I feel like if you got a good enough AI, it could actually take into account every individual person's preferences and like line up the schedule. And then if we're going to get really, really, really fancy, you know, the number of patients that present per day is fairly stable year over year over year. And I love the idea of like an AI, you know, monitoring the area, monitoring the ED, scheduling according to patients. And then if there's some sort of overload or multiple sick patients show up, I love the idea of AI somehow like figuring out a solution. So like you know, we have a good telehealth program at the VA, and one thing that came up was I was like, what if AI could tag these patients that would get fully cared for by telehealth, and that could get pulled out of like the ED waiting room and sent home much faster care and clear up more space.
Yeah, that's a great point about like precision staffing. And
Yeah.
one of the things that our department did, I think, over the past year was if you just register to be seen in the emergency department, you get funneled to telemedicine actually. And then if you
Yeah.
still want to be seen by an in-person attending, then you go to the waiting room. But if the questions were answered by telemedicine, then you're done. And so that's one way, but that's not AI. I like the idea of like picking out some patients in the waiting room that perhaps like maybe easily addressed via telemedicine based on whatever algorithm that you put in.
No, I really like that too, because sometimes it gets super busy and there's like 40 people in our waiting room. But if there was like some AI tool that could look through, because sometimes they'll say chest pain and like sometimes that gets overlooked for like telehealth. But maybe again, if AI like dug deep into it, maybe like, oh, it was just like a 20-year-old that like, you know, had a burning chest pain or something that
Yeah.
could easily be seen by telemedicine. So I love that point. I have
Cool.
to ask though, Andy, are you working on any of these things? Because you have a lot of great ideas. Are you
Not
actually, these are great.
not yet, but the VA, there is actually some federal stuff that's trying to see how AI can help medicine.
I love it.
So I was
Yeah, you should
listening to
like
some of that
dive in.
beforehand.
Yeah, you've like, yeah, I really love the ideas. Um, so yeah, so on the next slide, it looks like LA you just went to. Use size space.
I love it. So Rob, Andy, if you haven't used it, it's great for all these like articles that come out, and I'm a very slow reader, and so it just gives. I write something like, give me a high level executive summary, detailed executive summary, or what I actually just type in is like TLDR, so it summarizes it for me, like what are the key points of the paper. And then I engage it a little bit more. If there's like a paragraph that I'm like reading over and over and I can't understand it, you can highlight it and it'll actually explain it further for you. And then I take it to the next level of, now I understand this paper, or I'm still struggling with this paper. I ask them to explain it to me like a sixth grader. Then it talks about like, well, imagine you're building a Lego or you're doing here's what yeah. So it's super helpful from that perspective to be able to look at a complex topic and allowing GPT to summarize it for me.
Yeah, if you haven't used it, basically it's just an extension on your like web browser. So it like lives in the right upper hand corner. And so say you're on any journal article. So say you're like just reviewing something. What?
Any website.
Yeah, anyway, yeah.
Like the New York Times you're reading.
Yeah. It can work anywhere. That is a good point. I've used it a lot for journal articles, but yeah, the possibilities are endless. And you can just like click on this little tiny, icon, and it gives cliff notes. I think in the next ask it questions. And this actually, you can use it for a lit search. So you can say, what are some articles on time management for physicians? And it does a pretty good lit search. Like, I was like looking through like the answers for this and I'm like, that's pretty good. Because sometimes like going through your department's website or, it can be like, oh gosh, how do I phrase this? And where do I put the brackets? But I thought it gave like a pretty good lit search. And, in the next slide, you'll see I'm part of AAEM, as I know some of the other of you are also. And I had to, like it was my month to post like journal club questions. And so like I had my article and I was like, what are some like good journal club discussion questions based on this article? And it came up with some really good questions. And again, this is just your minutes saved, right? Yeah, for book clubs, right? Like what are some thought-provoking questions? And all of a sudden, like an hour back of my life that I saved by, and I read through them, like I picked the ones I liked, you could have it generate more. And then I was done. Another platform, again, is photo generation. We talked a little bit about this. I use, you can use either DALL-E as part of ChatGPT. And again, that's now a paid subscription. And you'll see a couple of the photos that it's able to generate. The next one is, just putting in an oil painting of a physician at a computer. And so what was really cool about that was that you get these like never seen before pictures. And again, in my talk, I know you didn't like it. You thought she looked creepy, but I really liked her. They gave a talk together, and that was the picked, and he didn't like that photo, but I really liked it. But what's cool is that, again, it's great for learners, right? Like if you could, have a bunch of words on your screen, or you could have like a really cool oil painting of what you're talking about. And I really, really like that artistic, quality they can add to your photos to really like engage your learners. So again, Sally, again, that's the paid version. I also splurged recently and bought Midjourney. Gosh, I think it's like between $10 and $20 a month. But I'm giving a talk at Cord coming up, and it's about like wellness for physician moms. And so I just wanted some like really captivating photos, and it's really hard to find that on the web. So enter these photos that I found, and cool are those? Like it was like I typed in like, it was like, what are some of the barriers of physician moms? And it came up with the bottom right. And then I said, what are, some solutions for us was another like prompt. And I got the upper left. And I was like, these are beautiful. Like, I love them. And, again, such a time save, right? Like how many times when we're giving a presentation, or if we're writing an article or a blog or anything that we disseminate, that we're like really looking for like unique photos to really engage our learners. And I love the way AI can really, contribute to this. Have you guys used it for photo generation?
Yeah, it's for
Yeah,
slide
Andy.
design.
Yeah,
It's pretty awesome for slide design.
yeah.
You know, instead of like Googling something and then finding a photo, oh, that one's copyrighted, or oh, that one's like not like a good enough detail, so then it looks blurry. I think it's pretty incredible to get exactly what you want.
What do you use, Andy? Do you use Midjourney, Dali? Do you have your own system?
You know, it's funny, I haven't used it since you had to pay for it.
Yeah,
So now
I
I
know.
think maybe I'm gonna have to give them some money.
You know, it's like, I mean, sometimes it can be a time suck because it's so fun
Yeah.
to see what it generates. But yeah, for me, like I was like, you know, it's just worth my time to like, you know, just yeah, I paid for it. And Midjourney has a little bit of a learning curve. I don't know if LA you've played around with Midjourney. It's a little bit, it's like old school prompts. It's a little unique. Um, but the results are wonderful.
I just realized that there's a summary slide here. Should we go with like one final takeaways for each of
I
us?
Yeah, I think that was Rob's slide too. I don't know if Rob, you want to briefly comment. You had a lot of great thoughts about
Oh,
AI.
yeah. I mean, so I just kind of think what's inspiring to me is like how AI can actually be like almost like a coach for us too. Like they can do different things to kind of help us like with our like even areas where you don't think that AI would normally venture, like on the emotional side of things. So like how can it help us create a positive mindset? How can it overcome some of our barriers, like, you know, when we're coming off shifts? So like AI, I think like just when I was looking through this too, is like it works best when you look at it as a partner,
Yeah.
or in this case, like as a coach too. And so as a
Great point.
coach, it can help us to kind of be a partner, especially if you don't have, if the place you work doesn't have the resources to actually give you a coach, maybe AI can kind of step into that spot. So here's just kind of a bunch of summary of things that I thought would be really fun to look at. And so a lot of these things are actually out there too, that you can start to use tomorrow, and have AI kind of step in that coach role for you, especially if your institution doesn't give that to you. So
Yeah, I like it. I wish that AI can also give me more time because the schedules and meetings are just like one after another. But I can definitely see how many of the tools that we talked about here today will allow us to at least prioritize and divvy up our time a little better so that we can have some time for ourselves also.
Yeah, thanks so much to everybody. I come away from this presentation with a lot of tips and new things to try. So yeah, thank you for sharing.
Cool. Yeah, and thanks, Roxanne, for setting this up for us. Andy, final words.
Yeah.
Pie Sky.
Oh man. No,
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
I think of all the pain points in medicine: documentation, billing, determining if someone needs to be admitted or obs. I mean, all of this stuff, you know, could and should be automated. So I think there's an old Isaac Asimov quote that's the saddest aspect of life right now is that science gathers knowledge faster than society gathers wisdom. And I think it will not be too
Wow.
long before we have the wisdom to use these AI tools appropriately. And hopefully we all get lots of time with patients, lots of times with family, lots of time to ourselves to explore the things that bring us great joy. I think AI is going to get us there eventually.
I love it.
Andy, you're gonna do it. I'm gonna see your name in like lights. You have so many good thoughts, so I
Well,
love
thank you,
it.
everybody. I
Thanks, guys.
have to go to another meeting, and so I really enjoyed this conversation.
Yeah. Thank you all
Thank
very much.
you.
Bye.
Bye.
Everybody.